Hey Fae folk, welcome and welcome back. So for today's video, we're gonna be talking pet peeves, okay? Because obviously I love the doll collecting hobby. Obviously you guys love doll collecting as a hobby, but I feel like anything that people love typically also has some things that are kind of the drawbacks of it, right? Like everything has positives and negatives. And so there's always going to be aspects of collecting that kind of bother us. And those might vary person to person, but everyone has their pet peeves. And so that is what we are talking about today. I had a couple of my own that I wanted to talk about. And then I did also ask you guys here on the YouTube community tab, as well as over on Instagram, to submit your pet peeves. And I have no idea how many I even got. So many of y'all responded. So first of all, huge shout out to everyone who did so. It was super helpful for me to compile this list to get all of that input. I also do need to apologize because there's physically no way that I could possibly do every single pet peeve in this video and keep it at a reasonable length because again, so many of you guys responded. So please do know that if I didn't include your pet peeve here, that doesn't necessarily mean I disagree with it or that I didn't like the suggestion or anything like that. I had to cut some things. And so I tried to include the pet peeves that I feel like I was seeing the most commonly or ones that really stood out to me. So nothing personal if I didn't choose yours. It's just, I was trying not to make this be a 2-hour video. So with that being said, we still do have a ton to get through. So let's go ahead and just jump right on in. I should also say these are in no particular order. It's not most agreeable to less agreeable or anything like that. It's literally just in the order that I happen to write them down. So that's all we're doing. The first one was one that I sprang to my mind immediately and that a lot of you guys chimed in with as well. So I feel so validated. And that is tea ties. If you aren't familiar with that term, if you aren't familiar with hearing that, it's specifically the ones I was thinking of are the ties that go into the doll's head, the back of the actual head of the doll in box. You'll also see this on pieces of clothing, maybe a sleeve is attached to the box or to another piece of clothing with a tea tie. And I hate these things with such a passion. I understand that dolls need to be put into box in a way that is marketable and makes for a good display and everything. And I understand that doll companies want their doll to be looking as pristine and as perfect as possible in the box so that people walking by are more likely to buy them. However, there has to be a different solution besides these tea ties. When it comes to the clothing, I feel it's always, for some reason, in the most flimsy piece of clothing possible. It would be in a piece like this sleeve, instead of a nice solid thick piece of clothing like the rest of this dress that you might not notice a hole. It's always through something like this where it makes a very obvious hole, or a satiny material, stuff like that, where it's you cut the tea tie apart and the remnants are there. The damage has been done. That is so frustrating. And then when it comes to the tea ties in the back of dolls' heads, I just despise those. Every time you have to get them out, I feel I am so at risk of cutting doll hair. I don't want to cut my doll's hair when I'm unboxing it. Maybe afterwards I'll decide she needs a haircut, but I don't want to accidentally cut just a whole chunk off trying to get this tea tie out. They're also they're never long, right? They're never long tea ties, so it's at least easy to kind of pull the doll forward. They're always super short, so you gotta really work at it to get your scissors in there and to cut just the tea tie and not the hair. And I just feel there has to be a different packaging solution because they're so irritating and they're so hard to deal with. And I feel they're so damaging to the clothing and sometimes to the doll's head that it's not something that I enjoy. I don't think I've ever seen anyone say anything glowingly positive about tea ties, and a lot of you guys, like I said, did mention this in the comments that you also hate them. So thank you, I concur, and they will forever be the bane of my existence until companies start using something else. Next up is the pet peeve that I think is probably the most common one amongst us as a community, and that is scalpers / resellers. I saw this comment so many times, and again, I completely understand, and this was one that I had thought up as well, and immediately that's something that comes to mind when I think about things I don't like about collecting dolls is scalpers and resellers, because they just make actual collectors have such a hard time at enjoying certain dolls. Scalpers mostly comes in, I feel with collector dolls. We'll see on Mattel Creations, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But we'll see on Mattel Creations how stuff sells out super quick. And a lot of the time it is going to people who are buying the doll specifically to resell it instantly. We've all seen, I feel the listings of announced dolls on Mattel Creations go live on eBay even before the doll has actually come out. People are already prepared to resell these dolls. And it's just so frustrating because you know, those of us who are trying to buy the doll because we actually genuinely love it have less of a chance of doing so when people are out there trying to just buy them and then resell them for money. I don't think it's very ethical. I don't think it's very kind. I don't think it's moral and anything like that. And then another thing that I did see mentioned in the comments was with resellers specifically for like secondhand dolls, finding really like nice dolls or like really good condition dolls or very complete dolls at a garage sale or an estate sale or something like that for a very good price, and then immediately posting them up for sale at a much higher value. That is genuinely the worst. I feel like I see all the time people talking about dolls that they thrift and finding really good like thrift finds. And for me personally, I've never had that. I've never had like a particularly amazing thrift find at like a crazy low price or anything like that. Like I've had okay finds, but I've never had like, oh my gosh, here's a complete Monster High doll from Gen 1 for $15. You know, like I haven't gotten that lucky, but some people do. And it is always so like heartwarming to see actual collectors have that experience of like finding one of their dream dolls at like a random garage sale, or finding a piece that they needed to complete a doll at a garage sale. Like that is so wholesome and so wonderful, but it's something that turns sour so quickly when resellers get involved, because they will see these dolls and buy them for like 5, 10, 15 bucks and then resell them for upwards of like $50. And it's just so sad because again, that's a doll that like could mean so much to somebody. And it's so frustrating to see people pick it up just so that they can make a quick profit. It's not chill, not a vibe. And I know this is a problem in a lot of other collecting communities, not just dolls, but like dolls specifically, it really sucks to see. So again, one that I completely understand why it's a pet peeve of so many of you guys, because it's also a pet peeve of mine. Next up, we have blind box packaging, which I do feel like, thankfully, we're seeing a little bit less of. Like, it's definitely not as prevalent, at least as far as I've seen, as it has been in years past. But we still do have some dolls that are doing blind box style packaging. First one that comes to mind is one that I mentioned in my last Dolls I Don't Want video, the cup style dolls or cup style dolls, where they're like ramen noodle themed dolls. I do think that's like a cute concept. I would be willing to try them out, except for the fact that they're blind packaged. And I don't want every single one. Like I want to know which one I'm buying. And I feel like that's just, it's so frustrating. Like I feel like as collectors, it's something that's really not fun. I could kind of sort of see where kids might find that more interesting, because like the surprise factor could be fun. But even then, I'm thinking of myself as a kid, and myself as a kid would have been pissed if I didn't get the one that I wanted. So like, I imagine there's also a lot of kids who don't like that. And obviously it's great for companies because it means that people are going to go out and buy multiples instead of just one, because that way they're trying to like ensure that they're getting the one that they want. So I get why companies do it, because I do think it's kind of an inherently predatory practice, but I'm right there with a lot of y'all where I just think it's frustrating. And even if you do like know which doll you're getting, kind of like the Skulltimate Secrets from Monster High, the other thing of the blind packaging is that you can't see what the physical doll looks like. So you might have an idea from stock photos, but you have no way of knowing until it's like too late and you're already opening them up that they might have a wonky face, or maybe like something is wrong with their clothing, something like that. Like any defects like that, you can't see in blind packaging. And so I feel like for collectors specifically, it's a horrible concept, like blind box packaging. I understand that it's, if I'm trying to be charitable, if we take away the monetary aspect, maybe it's like trying to be fun, but I feel like it's almost never actually fun, and it's usually just more stressful. So not really a big fan of that either. This next one is one that I don't personally have experience with, but like I completely understand. A lot of you guys mentioned overseas pricing, and yeah, absolutely. Like I complain about prices in America as is, because I already think that companies are overcharging. But when you take companies that are like based in America, like Mattel, MGA, that sort of thing, and then they sell their product overseas, whether that's like Australia or anywhere in Europe, like in Asia, wherever it might be, I feel like it's never a one-to-one like price range. It's never like, okay, 20 US dollars is this in pounds, and that's what it costs in Great Britain. There always is like a weird upcharge, and the doll is always like fundamentally more expensive in other countries. And again, this is not something that I personally experienced because I live in America. I've always lived in America. So like I've never had that experience, but I can completely understand why that's frustrating, because it's not even a matter of conversion. It literally is just that the doll is more expensive. And especially big corporations, like I could kind of sort of see where a super small company might have a harder time having equal prices overseas, because like if they're based in America, the shipping might be really extreme to get to certain countries. So I could kind of sort of understand and like see the reasoning behind that. But like Mattel is a huge company, right? Like they definitely can afford to handle the cost of having to ship overseas. And the fact that they hike up their prices anyway is honestly just really insulting to their overseas customers and like the fans of the dolls that don't live in America. Because hello, like there's so many other countries in the world. It is ludicrous to me that like a large company like Mattel is not catering to anyone else as much. It's just really not a vibe. And then kind of tying into that was people talking about store exclusives. And again, this is something that I feel like is already low level frustrating in America. Like if a doll is only available at certain places, like if it's a Walmart exclusive or a Target exclusive, it might be something where you kind of have to go out of your way to go to that store, depending on your daily life, to go look for the doll instead of just being able to like stop by where you always stop by. And then again, it goes even double for anyone who doesn't live in the US, because a lot of the times like a Target exclusive, it's like, okay, well, where's that doll going to be at in any other country that doesn't have Target? Like, where should we be looking for it? And sometimes places like Mattel, like will say, oh, it's going to be in like maybe Kmart in Australia. Maybe that's where it's going to go instead of Target. But sometimes they just don't. And sometimes those store exclusive releases just don't get released in other countries. And again, just really blindsiding like a large portion of their fan base and a large portion of their customer base. And it's not chill, not cool. So again, not one that like I personally have experience with, but I completely understand why it's frustrating. And like y'all are absolutely justified in being upset about this, because it is high-key ludicrous. I have so many to go. I'm gonna have to stop talking so much. A lot of you guys said polypropylene hair, which I do understand. I don't care as much as some people do about polypropylene. It is like kind of widely regarded as the worst of the hair fibers just because it tends to behave, I would say, like the least like actual hair when it comes to styling. It's kind of like weirdly voluminous and not like in a fun, like, oh, like volume in your hair kind of way, but more in just like a poofy sort of way. And it also does tend to degrade a little bit worse than other hair products. That's not what I wanted. Hair fibers like nylon and saran and all of that. So I absolutely understand why polypropylene is like a huge pet peeve for some people. For me personally, as long as I can still get it to look good, I'm like, okay, in 20 years when it's a problem, it'll be a problem for me then. I'm very much like, I'll put that off until later. So I don't feel this one like as personally. It's not necessarily something that I would call one of my pet peeves, but I can understand like it being a pet peeve to people. So I get why so many of y'all brought it up. Next on the list, boy dolls kind of getting the short end of the stick in honestly most every brand. I would say brands like Rainbow High sometimes, or like LOLOMG, care more about their boy dolls than a lot of other brands do and like put in more effort. But even so, like the boy dolls just don't get the same number of releases. There's not the same number of like male characters in these dolls. And then other companies like Mattel will put in significantly less effort towards their boy dolls than their girl dolls. And it is just really frustrating because I feel like it's this horrible loop where companies are like, oh, well, the male dolls don't sell as well, so we're not going to put as much effort into them. But I feel like the reason they don't sell as well is because they don't put as much effort into them. Like, I can't speak for kids because I don't have any children, and like, obviously I'm not a child myself. But I feel like kids still like having male characters to play with. Like, I feel like when they're playing dolls, they like having a variety of dolls and a variety of genders and like characters to be able to play with. And then when it comes to adult collectors, like I can tell you the number one reason that I don't have as many boy dolls in my collection is because of the quality, because I feel like the designs aren't as fun or the clothing itself might not be as high quality. Like I would have so many more boy dolls if companies put in just as much effort into those as they do the girl dolls. And I feel like a lot of people are in the same boat. So 100% agree again. It's super frustrating. And I think that companies are just getting the wrong message as to why male dolls aren't being like bought off the shelves the same way. I really truly think that in their heads, they're like, oh, it's because they just aren't wanted. And it's like, no, just give them something interesting to wear, please, besides just like boring t-shirts and a short. Okay, this one I'm stumbling over my words already. This next one I high-key agree with, but I feel like this is always a huge topic of conversation. Toxic Gen 1 Monster High fans, which like, yes, I am still on this train. I feel like some of the like hatred between generations of Monster High has thankfully died down since G3 has like been finding its footing and like been around for longer. But there are still G1 Monster High fans who are just so intensely hateful towards G3. And like, you don't have to like it, right? Like, obviously you as a human being are allowed to like and dislike what you want when it comes to your collection and your dolls. No one is forcing you like to buy G3 dolls if you hate them, but the amount of vitriol that people have for these dolls is genuinely wild to me, and also so not in line with like Monster High's core values. Especially, I saw a lot of you guys bring up the fat phobia that has been present since G3 came out. First, people were really upset that Draculaura had thicker hips, which, like, please calm down and look at a real human being. I promise you, a lot of them are shaped like that and like are still very beautiful people. And then when Caddy came out, Caddy's even bigger, even thicker than Draculaura. And again, we just saw this wave of toxic G1 Monster High fans just being like, oh yeah, like fat Caddy is ugly. G1 Caddy was better because she's nice and skinny. And it's like, that's honestly weird behavior. I had a whole video on this. I'm going to try not to rant too much, but like, you can dislike the dress that Caddy comes in, you can dislike her design or whatever, but sitting there and being mad that a piece of plastic is like quote unquote fat, that's wild to me. Like that is high key crazy to me that some people are upset about that because it's fine. Like fat people exist, so fat dolls exist, and she's beautiful. She's like super cute. I don't know. I'm getting on a tangent again, but yeah, I feel like there are a weird amount of G1 fans who, instead of just being like, yeah, I like G1 better, or I prefer to engage with G1, I only collect G1, are actively hateful towards G3, and it's just unnecessary. Remember earlier when I said we were going to talk about Mattel Creations? Yep, the whole website is a pet peeve for some of y'all, and honestly, I get it, because every single time I've ever tried to buy anything on Mattel Creations, it has not gone smoothly. It's always been a nightmare. I've only tried a couple of times, and it's not a good experience. Like, it's not just like add to cart, teehee, I'm having fun, we're buying something. It's genuinely like always so stressful and so awful. And like, I'm not even someone who tries for that many drops. I cannot even imagine how people feel when like there's someone who wants every doll and like has to try every single drop to get through that website, because it's just an absolute mess. And for a professionally created website from a very large company, there's really no excuse for why so many bots should be able to be buying multiples of dolls even though they aren't supposed to be able to, why so many scalpers like are able to grab dolls instead of proper fans, why the dolls like run out of stock so quickly anyway. And also, not like as of late, because I feel like this has been a problem for several months now, but also Mattel Creations just like randomly stopped shipping to certain countries kind of out of the blue. As far as I know, I don't think they've ever even addressed it or like talked about what's going on or like when that might come back. So again, this kind of ties into any fans that don't live in America. Now Mattel Creations is even worse because they might not even ship to your country. It's so bizarre, and there's just honestly no excuse. I understand this one. I feel like this one might get me in a little bit of trouble, but we're going to say it anyway. So one of y'all submitted this, but I high-key violently agree. There's like a caveat there, okay? So the pet peeve is when a collector, specifically a collector who does post online, we're not naming any names, we're just saying in general, this is a phenomenon that I've seen with several people, so like I'm not targeting anyone, but will buy like a brand, like they get really invested in a brand, say Rainbow High. They're like, okay, all I want is Rainbow High. Like I love Rainbow High, I'm primarily a Rainbow High collector, I buy all of their releases or most of their releases, and then they kind of fizzle out and they kind of become less interested, and then they will sell all of their Rainbow High dolls in favor of the next fixation, which let's just say it's G3 of Monster High. Suddenly they're buying up G3 of Monster High. And then like a year later, they're like, ah, dang, I'm kind of back into Rainbow High. Let me sell off all of my Monster High dolls and then buy back all of my Rainbow High dolls. And it's just like this cycle. Now, the caveat here is that I 100% understand that this can happen kind of on accident for people. Like maybe you genuinely think that you're done with, again, we're just using the examples of Rainbow High. Like maybe you genuinely feel, okay, yeah, like I don't feel in love with these dolls anymore. I want to sell them so I can invest that money into something else that brings me joy. Like that's chill. I'm not trying to say that you're a bad person if you do that, or even that you necessarily apply to this pet peeve if you do that, because I do think most people who that happens to, it's not intentional or it's not like a continuous cycle, but there are some people who I have seen online who it feels like this is just so routine. Like it's like absolute clockwork. It'll be, okay, selling Gen 1 Monster High dolls. Now I'm collecting Ever After High. Now I'm selling all my Ever After High dolls. Now I'm collecting Rainbow High. Now I'm selling all my Rainbow High dolls. Now I'm collecting my Monster High from Gen 1 back again. We're also going to add some G3 back in there. Just kidding. I've decided I like G3 better and I only want G3. I'm selling all my Gen 1 again. And like, technically speaking, there is nothing wrong with that, okay? Like, I'm not trying to be an asshole. At the end of the day, it's your collection. You can do with it what you want. But it is kind of funny to me where, like, if it becomes a cycle and it's happening consistently over the course of years, like, maybe just keep the dolls. Because if you are someone who tends to, like, enjoy them and then kind of forget about a brand and then go back to the brand. Like, you don't have to have everything on display. You can put them in storage, but like, it doesn't have to be this constant cycle of selling and then getting into the next one and then selling and then getting into the next one. And especially if it happens to coincide with being a content creator, I do think some part of that might be about what's more popular at the time. Again, I'm not talking about any one person in particular. I'm just saying, like, I have seen this. And so it was really interesting to me that one of y'all brought it up, because I was like, I know, I hear you. I see what you're saying and I get it. So like, again, obviously you can do what you want with your collection, but I kind of understand why this is a bit weird and like a bit frustrating to see other people doing this. Ooh, this one is a good one. I didn't think about this until a couple of y'all commented it, and I 100% agree. So within like specifically like the doll customizing subset of the hobby, I have mostly seen this with Gen 1 Monster High dolls, but I'm sure it happens with a lot of other brands as well. You know, sometimes people will use G1 Monster High dolls as a base for their custom, and sometimes that G1 Monster High doll is considered like rare by the community. Maybe it's just really expensive secondhand or whatever the case might be. And so people will get mad at the customizer for like defacing the doll and like taking out the hair and wiping off the face and making a new doll out of it. And I think that is just like wild behavior, first of all, because I do think that for the majority of dolls, barring like Comic-Con exclusives or like depending on where you're located, store exclusives, because like obviously, as we talked before about international collecting, if you're in a different country, store exclusives might genuinely be more rare over there. But for the most part, these dolls aren't like actually rare. Like, they were mass produced at a certain point in time. So like there's tons of them out there. Whether people are selling them is a different matter. It might make a doll like rarer on the secondhand market, but like, that doesn't mean it's rare, right? And also, that person owns the doll. Like, they're allowed to do what they want with it. And if they're making art out of it, to me, it's like, okay, they obviously didn't love that doll enough in its current condition to keep it. I would rather see it have new life and become a new doll instead of having it just like be left to rot. To me, that's like a better solution, but it is just like very strange for people to get upset at customizers who are like just trying to perform their art and just trying to enjoy their art, and like being upset over a doll that like they weren't gonna sell anyway or anything. Like it's not like someone's missing out on this doll because they customized it. I don't know. I hope that that makes sense, but I do think that that is like a very weird behavior that I've definitely seen before, and I'm not a huge fan of. This next one does kind of tie into this. So I feel like I am being a bit of a hypocrite talking about like, oh yeah, people who routinely sell everything they own only to buy it back years later, and then being like, oh, well, you shouldn't tell other people how to collect, but like, here I am. Anyway, this pet peeve specifically was submitted as someone who was saying that they don't like when people make fun of small collections, which like, I am lucky enough to have never seen personally, but sadly, I really do believe that that happens, where like people with large collections will shit on people who have small collections, which is honestly ridiculous, because unless you bought out someone else's collection, everyone starts with a small collection, right? Like, for the majority of doll collectors, you start with 1 or 2 dolls, and then you build up, and over time you end up having a collection. Like, I didn't buy every single doll that is in this room with me within the space of 2 years. Like, I have been off and on collecting for like a decade now. So of course I have like a pretty large collection compared to someone who started yesterday, but I'm never going to give them grief about it, because my God, they're just starting out. And also, even if you're not just starting out, if you just happen to have a small collection because that's what makes you happy, why would I insult you? Like, that is so crazy to me. So again, like, I believe it happens. I'm very lucky that I've never seen it. That is not valid behavior. Like, no, that is so wrong. Like, you should never be doing that to someone. And I wanted to expand it to just anyone who makes fun of another person's collection or like the way that they collect. I think a couple other people also mentioned the out of box, in box debate. And it's like, if someone has spent their money on the stall, let them enjoy it how they want to enjoy it. Like, I just don't see the point in judging other people for how they collect. I just cannot understand the idea of looking at someone and being like, oh, you're collecting wrong. Like, you're collecting inappropriately, or you're not as good a collector as I am. I just don't really get that mindset. Again, I do understand that I'm saying that, and I, like 4 minutes ago, was like, oh yeah, well, it's weird when people like collect and sell and collect and sell. But again, I really do think that that one bothers me more so because it low-key feels like those kind of people are collecting more for the attention than for the love of the dolls. We're getting really controversial, and I'm getting uncomfortable with it. Anyway, collect how you want, collect how makes you happy. Let's continue to the next one. Alrighty, so next up we have a lack of diversity or representation. Specifically speaking, one person mentioned they really dislike when characters that are meant to be Black really like only get released with straight hair, or mostly get released with straight hair. And again, this is one that I totally agree with. It's something that I feel like we talk about fairly often on this channel. Like, I think it was in the Dolls I Don't Want video that I've already referenced, where I was talking about the latest Ultimate Secrets Venus doll, how she had nice like curls, and now she mostly has straight hair with a couple of braids thrown on. I totally understand this being a pet peeve. Like, it's frustrating for me to see, and I'm not even part of like a marginalized community in that sense. I mean, like, I'm part of the LGBT, so it's cool to see like non-binary rep, but in terms of like physical representation, like physical features, I'm not even part of a community that is like affected by a lack of diversity, and it's frustrating for me to see that lack of diversity. So I can only imagine actually being part of those communities is so much worse. Like, it's just frustrating, especially in the year of our Lord 2024. I feel like companies really do not have an excuse to not be including diverse features and diverse skin tones and hair and everything like that in their doll lines. Like, there's just genuinely no reason, like no good moral reason to be only creating like white Eurocentric dolls. To me, like, I honestly can't think of a reason other than racism. So yeah, I 100% agree with this one. I think it's dumb and frustrating. And also, like, you're just missing out on so many beautiful features and like so many creative things that you can do with dolls by only using like Eurocentric features. It's a weird choice. It's not a vibe, and 100% a pet peeve of mine. Okay, we are getting like kind of close to the end here. Someone mentioned collector doll prices, which absolutely, I feel like I'm really talking about Mattel this video a lot, so it's not an uncommon occurrence here on the channel, but I think of specifically Mattel. I mean, not that they're the only ones who do this, but just that they're the ones that I think of the most, where collector doll prices almost always seem like too much to me, but also they very much feel like just throwing darts at a dartboard, and it feels very random what doll ends up being priced at $50 versus $100 versus $75. Like, it just feels so sporadic, and it doesn't feel like the price of the doll really ever correlates directly to the amount of pieces or the design or like whatever the case may be. It's very hard to look at collector dolls and be like, oh, that's why that costs this much. At least in my opinion, like I have a hard time figuring out where the price justification is for a lot of collector dolls. Just totally agree. I think it's weird. And it is frustrating to feel constantly like you're looking at these collector dolls and you never know what price they're going to be or if they're going to be worth the price. And it's just a whole weird mess. Oh, this next one, this is like so relatively unimportant compared to some things that we've talked about today, but also such a hard degree for me. If your doll has like a voluminous skirt, like it's supposed to be a ball gown, it's supposed to be like very wide and very poofy, and there's no petticoat in it, oh my God, that really truly is so irritating, because then you just have this ball of fabric, like this bundle of fabric that maybe looks good in the box because they put some plastic or some cardboard in there to like hold the skirt out like it's supposed to be. But the second you unbox it, it's just like this flat, like limp pile of fabric instead of this nice, beautiful ball gown. And yeah, I just, again, like super like low stakes on that one, but I 100% agree that like if you're going to go through the effort to make a doll and give them this like wild, fancy, poofy skirt, just throw in a petticoat. I feel like it cannot be that expensive to add in, especially for like bigger companies who are making like mass-produced dolls. It's necessary, okay? It is necessary to make these dresses look good, and I want them to be included more often. Okay, I think there's like 5 more, something like that. This one I feel like is more so aimed at Barbie. That's where I see it the most. So again, really just taking pot shots at Mattel today. But someone mentioned pixelated faces, and absolutely yes. Again, like I'm sure I've seen this on dolls other than Barbie, but I feel like I see it most consistently on Barbie, or some of the faces, the way that it's printed on, like the method that they use. I can't remember the name of like the method or anything right now, but it leaves the faces being very pixelated. Like you can very clearly see the little dots instead of it feeling like smooth and nice. And it is just so frustrating and so awful to see, especially because it's so like inconsistent. I think it was Hey Juno on TikTok made a TikTok about this, talking about the fact that some like fashionistas or some Barbie extras have pixelated faces, but other dolls from the same lines don't. So it's not even like, oh, all fashionistas have pixelated faces because that process is cheaper. So that's what they do. And then like the next level up, like the Barbie extra dolls don't have that. It is so sporadic and random, very much like Mattel's prices. And it's just frustrating to see a doll that otherwise is so pretty, but then like you zoom in and you realize, oh, her face is going to be super pixelated and awkward to look at. That's cool. Okay, this one we are finally going to hit MGA specifically because I feel like they are most guilty of this. Excessive gel in doll hair. Rainbow High? Yeah, no, that's like the worst thing ever. I feel like I've ranted about this quite recently. I just don't understand it. Like I can understand some gel being used for doll hairstyles, especially if they're like particularly intricate or anything like that, because again, you want to make it look nice in the box, but the amount of gel that MGA uses is never necessary. Like they literally never use the amount that I would consider needed for any given doll. It's genuinely wild to see. MGA is the only brand, specifically with Rainbow High. I feel like I usually do okay with like LOL, but Rainbow High specifically is the only time when I wash a doll's hair that I routinely have to do it twice, because I'll scrub, I'll comb the soap through, like I'll do everything you're supposed to do. And yet when the hair dries, it's still crunchy because whatever godforsaken gel they're using is heavy duty stuff and they've used so much of it. It takes so much effort to get out. And that's me washing the doll's hair. Like I can only imagine the kids playing with the doll's hair. That stuff's going to be crunchy forever. Like that, you can't break that up with a brush, not nicely. It's bad, it's rough, and I do hate it. Alrighty, next up, we have people who routinely, I almost just dropped my phone, routinely will buy dolls that they complain about. And like, I get it. Again, I feel like this one is kind of content creator specific. Like, I mean, maybe y'all know people in your real life. I don't know anyone in my real life who acts like this, but like, I feel like we've all seen some content creators who will consistently shit on dolls and be like, this is an ugly doll, this is an ugly doll, this is an ugly doll. And then they'll buy it anyway. And I do want to like really focus on the word consistently, because obviously people are allowed to change their minds, right? Like if you think the doll is hideous and then like it kind of grows on you over time. I've had that happen to me. I've had the opposite happen to me. Like I feel like that's pretty normal to just on occasion be like, oh yeah, I don't like this doll. Well, I guess maybe I do. Let's find out. And I want to buy her. But there are some people who just routinely, like genuinely almost every single doll are like, yeah, this doll's ugly. Surprise, I bought them. And I can understand why that's frustrating, because it's like, why are you buying the doll if you hate it? Like, it's just not a vibe. Like, it just doesn't really make sense to be spending your money on something that you hate. And so then it kind of feels like, do you even actually hate it? Or are you just saying that because it's like fun to shit on stuff on the internet? I don't know. Again, very much to me, the key here is like the consistency thing. Because if it's like every single doll, that's frustrating. If it just kind of happens, sometimes I get that people change their mind. But yeah, sometimes it's like, why are you putting yourself through this? Last two, we are almost done. I feel like this has been kind of long already, sorry. But first one is holiday dolls being labeled as holiday dolls for like kind of performative inclusivity, but like almost always they are kind of Christmas themed. I feel like it's only natural that I go kind of back to Barbie with this one, because obviously Barbie makes a holiday doll every single year, but they're definitely not the only brand to do this. And I do 100% agree. I feel like looking at, just for the ease, like looking at Barbie holiday dolls, most of them do read very Christmas. And like some of them are more just kind of like wintry, or maybe like a little bit just more about the season than like a particular holiday. But like a lot of them do lean very much, okay, yeah, we're calling this a holiday doll, but it's a Christmas doll. And like you can tell that it's a Christmas doll. And it's not like we have that with other holidays around that time. Like there's no Barbie holiday doll that comes to mind that I'm like, oh, that is very clearly a Hanukkah doll, or that is very clearly a Kwanzaa doll. So it does become something where it's like, okay, like, yes, the term holiday is nice to use, because like if you're saying happy holidays, like, okay, you don't know what someone celebrates. Like it's a nice way to kind of be all inclusive when you're trying to spread some seasonal cheer. But when you use it in a line like that, and you're kind of using it even though it is really primarily a Christmas line, it does feel a bit performative and it does feel a bit disingenuous. And I 100% agree with this. Like I totally get where this person is coming from. And it's actually something that I have been like thinking about a lot lately for reasons that we'll talk about later. Way later on the channel. But yeah, like it is kind of something that's a little bit weird, and it would be cool to see like holiday lines really broaden that and like actually become proper holiday lines. Even like thinking about the Monster High holiday dolls, most of those dolls are for, I mean, I think that the Claudine was like allegedly for the winter solstice, but let's be real here. Like, let's be honest about Mattel's like intentions there. And even like their Valentine's Day dolls, like they are very specific with like the cultures that they will draw forth from these holiday dolls. They do make like the Dia de los Muertos Barbies and the Skelita dolls. So like that's cool. But there are so many cultures around the world and so many holidays specific to those cultures. And it would be really cool if holiday lines were more inclusive and like more celebratory of not just like the most popular holidays in America. And then to round out the video, we're going to end on another opinion that I heavily agree with, another pet peeve that just irritates me to no end, and that is the concept of clubs or subscriptions to buy dolls. So think like the Barbie signature membership, where you have to spend $10 a year to be part of the membership, and certain dolls you aren't even allowed to consider buying unless you have that membership. The Monster High Fan Club operates in the exact same way. Or things like, I think it's the W Club for Integrity Toys. I don't know that much about Integrity. Like, I've watched some videos on them, but I've never ever done anything with them personally, because I think the whole business model is like bizarre. Like, they do make some pretty dolls, but it's a lot. So yeah, just like the concept of having to pay to then also pay for a doll is wild. And I'm saying this like with my full chest. I understand that I have the Monster High Fan Club membership. That's just because for me personally, like I feel so strongly about a lot of Monster High dolls that I am willing to spend the $10 a year to kind of like be able to have that access. But that being said, I spend it begrudgingly. Like, I'm not happy about it because I feel like, I think I've compared this before. I think when the fan club came out, I talked about this, but I'm not sure how common this is outside of the US. So just like another quick explanation, even like parts of the US, I don't know if y'all have stores like this, but stores like Sam Club or Costco are like big wholesale stores where you have to pay a yearly membership to be allowed to shop there. But in return, a lot of the times, depending on like the level of membership you have, they have really good rewards, or the whole fact of the store being like a wholesale store, like a bulk item store, is that you're paying less for the items themselves. Like, there are like exclusive sales, or it might just be the fact that like, because you're buying so heavily in bulk and because you're buying at like more of a wholesale cost, you end up saving money in the long run, even though you're paying to shop there. But that's not how these doll clubs work. That's not how these doll subscription services work. You don't pay for the fan club and then get free membership on any Mattel Creations order. You just pay $10 to pay the same thing anyone who didn't pay the $10 is paying, except like now there's going to be some dolls that release that only you are allowed to buy, right? Like, it's just a really weird thing to do, and it's just a way, if we're being 100% honest, for these companies to squeeze a little bit more money out of their consumers. And again, I understand I am being a little bit hypocritical talking negatively about this when I did pay it for one thing, but I just think it's genuinely wild. And I'm bringing up the W Club again, even though I don't know that much, because should I be talking about things that I know? Yes. But do I have self-control? No. I don't know exactly what the cost is, but it's significantly more to join the W Club. Like, it's not the same. Not that I'm trying to say $10 is insignificant, because for some people that is significant. And like, I've been there, I get it. Like, sometimes that is make or break, and like $10 can be a lot for somebody, but $10 is a lot less than it costs to join the W Club. And then those dolls also are so expensive. And even after you join, it's not like with a fan club doll, it's kind of those things where like it could totally sell out. Like Fan Club Gulia, when she came out, she could have sold out. Like, that could have happened. I mean, she did eventually sell out, but at least if you have the fan club membership, you had like a solid chance of getting her. But with the W Club, there's like some dolls that are released that you have to go through special brokers, and it's like a weird situation. Some dolls that are released that you enter a lottery, and then if you win the lottery, then you're allowed to buy the doll. But like, you still have to pay full price. It's literally just a lottery ticket for a chance to buy the doll. Like, the whole system is extremely strange to me. And granted, again, I don't know that much about it, so maybe there's a reason for it, but like, I can't help but feel that the reason is just trying to make as much money as possible. So that leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Not chill, and definitely any subscription services that don't have like a proper benefit to them, like a monetary benefit, like a coupon or anything like that. Those definitely feel predatory to me, and definitely are a pet peeve of mine, and apparently yours as well. But that's everything for today. We've been talking for a while, being negative for a while, but sometimes you just got to get it out, you know, like sometimes you just got to rant with people who are like feeling the same frustrations as you are. So hopefully this video was kind of cathartic to some of y'all. I hope it was interesting enough. I don't really have any like fun visuals or anything. I'm not really like showing anything off, so kind of more podcasty, but I hope you were able to enjoy it nonetheless. Definitely leave your opinions on everything in the comments down below. If I didn't talk about your pet peeve, feel free to post it again below, and I'm sure that like we can talk in the comments about it. But yeah, that I think is finally enough for me today. So I hope you guys were able to enjoy. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day or your night or whatever it might be, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye guys.